veins, I've been driving this train. Years in this lane, there's no stopping this flame. Cause I came to the game and I changed it to play how I like, rearranged it to my own domain. Yeah, I got what it takes, made lots of mistakes, taking shots, skipping breaks, feeling lost, feeling great, popping off, singing straight, never stopped, never changed. All the squad here to play, and I've got something to say, yeah. I work hard each and every day, I get lost in the words I say. I don't push pause, no I push play. I won't stop till I make a change. I withdraw on the things I make. I turn flaws into flawless traits. I build tall, never capped in space. I won't stop till I hear him say.
And we're back. We're back here at Actually Aubrey. We're here tonight with Blake from Ready to Love Miami, Season 7. Blake, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you for being here, too. Alex, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm glad to see Blake. Thank you, brother, for coming and being here for our audience and for us. And, we have a nice interview. We have a nice little chat.
Look, always here to support. Always here to support.
Yeah. So, Aubrey, you have anything before I get started with Blake?
You go right ahead.
Okay. Yeah. First of all, Blake, we had Blue on here, a few weeks ago. And I was upset with Blue. And I figured out now why I'm upset with Blue for the same reason I'm upset with you now, because y'all just too good looking. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you make guys like me look bad. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like,
I appreciate that. I think Blue got me beat, though. Blue got me beat.
You think Blue got you beat?
Blue got me beat. Yeah, that's his swag. So, we going to let Blue have it. I'll be runner up. And I'll carry the torch for Blue.
Yeah, man. But yeah, just good looking dudes, man. I appreciate that as a man. I can tell you guys that and be comfortable with that. You know what I mean?
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate the love.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Let's start off with your life before Ready to Love, your upbringing, your rearing. Where were you born and raised? Were you two-parent household, or how did that dynamic go?
So I'm a Brooklyn native. I was born, raised in Brooklyn, New York. Claimed Jersey as well. Finished our high school in Jersey. I was a product of young parents. Both my parents were young when they had me. Traditional inner city upbringing, inner city youth, grandparents heavily involved, parents involved. Mother passed when I was about 16, lived with my pops. I think it was a pretty standard, for the time, for the generation that I grew up in. I was a latchkey kid. Back in those days, we didn't have it like we have it now with cell phones and all this other stuff, right? You got a key and you got a shoelace, and you wore that shoelace around your neck with the key, and you need to give your life up before you give that key up.
That's right.
And I guess that's where the term latchkey kids came from, right? So I guess I grew up as a latchkey kid, in the inner city, and went over to Jersey, finished our high school in Jersey, and really began my adult life thereafter.
Yeah. Well, you said your mother passed when you were 16. My condolences for that. That's very young to lose a mother. Yeah, just so I don't get too personal with that, but I do want to ask you, since you mentioned that, what is the wonderful memory that you have to this day that sticks with you about your mom?
My mother was a comedian. I mean, she was funny. She was always on joke time. Nothing was ever serious, when it came to her. She was also the youngest, of her siblings, all brothers. She was the only girl, so she was a bit spoiled. So I'd say that she grew up more as a big sister than she did as a mom, because she had me so young. My grandmother was really, quote unquote, our mother. But I don't really have too many, bad memories and negative memories. I think, it's a parent, right? And I think we all go through the same thing where our parents are, our world when we're young. And as we become adults, we start to understand our parents more, and we can kind of bridge the gaps for some of the things that we didn't understand. And, I think that's the greatest part of it, of growing.
You have siblings?
I don't. I had a stepsister for a while, but no, I don't have any siblings. My uncles are pretty close in age to me. I think my youngest uncle might be like 4 years older than me. So they grew up as my older brothers as opposed to, being my uncles.
Right. It's not like my family dynamic. We're a lot like this, kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was just really popular for New York at that time. I mean, we all had, the same story, right? We all had the same family dynamic. We all lived in apartments where, probably been there 20 years. My grandmother was in the same apartment for like 25 years. She had a door that faced her door. I can't tell you those people's name, right? I don't know their business. Like, we don't know anything about it. It was just a completely different way of life than what we have now.
Right. Yeah, because I same thing, projects. I grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant, some of them Marcy projects, over there where Jay-Z from. And later on, I moved to Crown Heights. So, Brooklyn, man, there's always love for Brooklyn fam. I don't miss it at this age. I'd rather be where I am.
I tell people all the time, like, this is New York. This isn't New York. This is New York. So people ask, like, do you go home often? And I'm like, nah, because New York is not what it used to be when I was growing up. It's completely different. It's gentrified. Even the hospital I was born in, is no longer there, right? So it's just a new feel. So, trying to explain to people, I'm like a tourist when I go there too, right? I know the streets, but the stuff that's on the streets aren't the same things that was there when I was coming up. So definitely different. Definitely different.
Right. Is your family still close now? Your uncles, is your dad still alive, and everybody still close?
Yep, everybody's still close. My father left, he retired, left New York, went to Florida. So he's down in Florida as well, bouncing around. And, I think that everybody above my generation began to kind of migrate from New York as they began to retire. So, they kind of hit, North Carolina, Delaware, Florida. Still got a few family members that are up in New York, but the older parts of my family have definitely moved on from the city.
Delaware is a big retirement state too. It just gets cold there. That's the only thing about Delaware.
Yeah, and it's empty for me. I mean, there's not much there, and it's only it's big. You could drive from the beginning to the end in less than 30 minutes.
Right. If you're in that 13, that Route 13, you in and out of Delaware in a hop, skip, and a jump. Absolutely. So when you started to go to school, you went to school in New York or Jersey?
So for college, I started at West Virginia State. I went to West Virginia.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I went to West Virginia. That was a culture shock for me. So I left West Virginia State for the military.
Right. What was the biggest culture shock to you about West Virginia? Because I know about West Virginia. So what hit you the hardest? Ain't no brothers up there.
I dated a girl when I was in college, and she had introduced me to her cousin. And the cousin, I think the cousin may have even went to the school too. It was a guy cousin. And later on, I met her child. And then I went by her house and her cousin was there. And the little girl ran up to the cousin and was like, "Daddy, daddy, daddy." And that was a big culture shock for me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm looking around like, is this real? I'm dead serious. I am dead serious. That's when I was like, you know what? I think this is a big reason to get up out of West Virginia. But I mean, culturally, it was different too, as far as, not as many minorities, the way that you're treated in West Virginia. Not that it's horrible. It's just definitely different, when I'm coming from a city that's heavily populated with minorities.
Right.
So in New York at that time in the 80s, I try and get people to understand why we have like all of these conversations about race and stuff. In New York, if you were poor, you were poor. So it didn't matter what nationality you were. We looked at, the white people that live where we live like they were black people, right? And if you were Spanish, and it always the same. So, but when you go to West Virginia, there's an actual line, kind of drawn in the sand. Like, they let you know, that you're black, and they operate accordingly. So that was my experience.
Like you say in Brooklyn, the race is Pole. That's the race. That's everybody's race, Pole.
Right. So, right. So everybody's on like the N-word, and they're like, well, how come these people get to use the N-word? And it's like, look, in New York back then, like, if you were poor, everybody used it, right? It was for everybody, right? It wasn't. So, and it was funny because I remember when like Jennifer Lopez got in trouble from it, because she's from New York too. Yeah. And she was kind of like, what I do, right? She didn't know what she did, but you know, once she crossed over, they were like, nah, you know, that doesn't fly. So just a different day and time and a different adjustment to kind of what goes on nowadays.
Yeah, they used to give Fat Joe a lot of problems for using that word because he's Spanish.
Yeah,
so they give him a lot of problems for using the N word.
Right.
And Fat Joe, like, listen, I grew up with that. How can I stop using the word? I grew up with it. You know what I mean?
Of course,
so,
of course. But it's the people that don't live there, right? So that's kind of what social media did, is it expanded the base, and now people that aren't in that demographic get to judge what goes on within that base. And I think that's one of the challenges that, you know, we have with trying to have free speech, the conversations that we have. So yeah, definitely see that.
So what did you try to major in West Virginia? And how did you migrate out of there? What did you do after that?
I went in, I was doing criminal justice when I was in there. And then I left there and I joined the military as a military police officer. And then I left, well, I didn't leave, but I transferred from a military police officer to a CID agent, a special agent for the Department of Defense, if you will. Terrorism, counterterrorism investigations, protection. So from a law enforcement standpoint, you know, I had kind of run the gamut, you know, through my military career.
Wow. So as you traveled throughout the military, did you live in other countries or did you stay in the States?
No. I think my first duty station was like Korea as a military police officer. And then I went to Georgia. And then when I became an agent, I bounced around, and then I began to work protection. And when you work protection, you're stationed out of a place, which would have been Fort Belvoir, but it's not really a duty station because you wake up to a plane ticket saying, you know, this is your mission for the day. This is where you're going to go. So pretty much every day or every week you were somewhere else, you know, depending on what it was you were doing. If it was protection, criminal investigations, interrogations, it just depended on what you had going on. So I've definitely done a lot of countries, you know. I did the Iraq, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, you know, Pakistan, all the Stan countries, all the brown countries. You know, I've done all over Europe. I mean, I've been, you know, to have done something so great at a young age, you know, I really probably didn't take advantage of it, understanding the breadth of what it was, because I was so young when I did it, right? When I became an agent, I was 20, so I wasn't even old enough to carry a gun. I had to get a waiver, you know, to carry a gun, you know, as an agent. So I was pretty fortunate, you know, with making that decision. And I think that it was a good decision for me. Definitely a good decision.
Yeah, it kind of shapes your life to where it is today, because now, what are you in today? You're in securities or something?
So now I do corporate security. So it's security, but not security in the way people think. You know, for whatever reason, with Black people, whenever we say security, we automatically default to security guards. It's a little bit of a cybersecurity. It's a continuity of operations planning. So it's looking at large enterprises and creating the infrastructure. It's a lot of cyber because we have like ransomware nowadays, and we have a lot of information security. Typically, I'll lead a team of multiple people, and we create the policies, the procedures, and the infrastructure for the organizations.
That sounds very complicated.
So if you have a job, if you're in corporate America and you keep getting harassed with changing your passcodes, you know, every 30 days and every 60 days, that comes out of our office, right? So everything that has to do with security from the bottom up.
Wow. So career-wise, you seem well-rounded, a good upbringing, a good rearing, and obviously a good-looking guy. When did you really first start taking dating seriously and say, you know what, or first really fell in love?
That's a really good question. I don't know because I was explaining along this journey that until recently, the past few years, I had always been chosen, and I made up my mind that I was going to do the choosing, right? So I had always come across, you know, relationships, not in a bad way, but relationships where I allowed people to, you know, somewhat choose me as opposed to choosing them. And that's not to say that I settled for the person that I was dealing with, not at all, right? I dated some really, really great people, but the approach is completely different now at 45 than what it was at 25.
Yeah. Yeah. And see, that's the thing where guys like you, see, you were chosen. I had to chase. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So we not
different
there, Blake.
experience. Different experience. Yeah.
Different experience. I had to chase them down, bro. They coming to you like a magnet. I had to chase them. So
And still chasing.
Look, tell the truth. Tell the truth on the air. Tell the truth.
tell the truth. You know what I mean? So, but it's hard for you to say when you first fell in love. But did you ever decide, to be a married guy? Did you ever dream about having that nuclear family and that nucleus going on?
I've been married, but no, I don't think that I've ever had the traditional American dream of, house, white picket fence, kids, dog. I think that in my early years, probably like a lot of young people, and probably something that you've experienced too, we're a product of our environment in the sense that we have these things that we're supposed to do, but nobody ever tells us why we're supposed to do them. So I spent a lot of time in 20s and 30s, really just trying to fit the script and fit the mold to have this quote unquote, I don't want to say the American dream, but to create relationships in the way that I thought relationships should be created, which is based off what a relationship should be and should have, as opposed to being happy, right? And understanding that happiness is the goal, not marriage, not, being able to present this relationship to a family or what it's going to look like on the outside. So that was a big turning point for me. And I think once I recognized that, my relationships became much more fulfilling.
Right. And why do you think you didn't have that dream? Because you didn't see it growing up, or?
No, because we're not told we're not told anything about happiness growing up, right? We're told you go to school, you get a job, you get married, and you have kids, right? And then you provide for your family, right? Nowhere in there is figure out what makes you happy in life, pursue that, and walk that journey with someone. That's a completely different mission.
Sure is. Sure is. How long did the marriage last?
I married my best friend at the time. So we had dealt, on and off over the 10-year period. Then we were married, and I think we were married for a few years, maybe 3 or 4 years. So, the relationship total on and off was about 13 years.
Oh, okay. And children out of that union?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. How many children out of that union?
So I have 3 boys, and my youngest son is from that relationship.
Oh, okay. Okay. So are they all different moms, or?
Yeah, all different phases of my life, all different phases of the journey. Yep.
Okay.
So they're pretty spread out. So 23, 15, and 8.
Okay. So did you say different phases? Do you have a name for the different phases? What would you call the different phases?
Nah, I should put colors on it, right? No, I don't. I think that I don't have a name, but I can definitely recognize, where I was at each of those points, within my life, right? So especially for my first son, coming from New York, my grandmother had a 2-bedroom apartment, you know how that goes. It's like 7 people in the apartment. When I hit the military and I got to Georgia, I had my own apartment and a car, right? Nobody on that side of my family ever owned a car. So I had a car, I had a 1-bedroom apartment, I had a futon and a TV. You couldn't tell me I wasn't rich. Like, I made it. Like, life is over. You know what I mean? Like, what else? Like, what else is there? Like, I'm good.
Not the futon. Was it? I got a question for you. Okay, I got to break in here. Was it metal made or was it wood?
Nah, it was wood. It was wood. It was wood. It was wood. But yeah, as a matter of fact, I had the futon, I had the TV, and I had the Bowflex machine in the kitchen. Those are my 3 pieces of furniture. Those are my 3 pieces of furniture.
Because obviously you weren't using the kitchen for cooking.
Yeah, so now I can cook. Don't get it twisted. I can cook.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're on the other side of the kitchen.
Don't start none, Blake. It won't be none.
I can do that. But yeah, so at that phase of my life, being a little bit more open and thinking that I arrived and thinking that I was there, not really understanding relationships too in depth. You know what I mean? At 21, you think you know everything, right? Actually, 20 is when it happened. So, you just kind of think you know everything, and, life hits you, real fast. And then that's when you start to figure out, okay, you learn things like aligning with another person, right? Everybody says when they don't have children that they want a kid, but nobody really thinks about what that means when it comes to the other person. Have you had the conversations over, like, do you agree on how to raise children? Do you agree on what you want your children to be as they progress, right? Do you agree on what activities you want your kids in? So there's a lot that goes along with that. So to me, that was the beginning phase for me as I began to, really become a man at that point in my life.
Yeah. Do you see your children regularly? Because I know that can be difficult sometimes when you have children spread out.
I do. So a lot of traveling. My kids have air miles. My youngest probably flies the most. His mother, takes him all over the globe. And my oldest, probably not as much with my oldest, only because he's a grown man now, right? So trying to catch up to him and coordinate with him. He got his own stuff going on. But no, we're still very close, even though I have the separation that I do. And all of my family, all of my sons' mothers, they everyone gets along, right? So it's not just dependent on me to get my boys together, right? The moms will get the boys together as well, depending on what's going on. So it's really a really good nucleus. It's a decent situation to have. If you're going to have a broken situation like this, at least you have the support from everyone involved. So yeah, I really have no complaints there.
Yeah, it was similar to mine, Blake. My two ex-wives, they got along great until the passing of my second one, but they got along great. The kids got along great. In fact, my son, you mentioned career earlier. My stepson is stationed in Korea right now. He's Army. Okay. So okay. We have that background and things like that. So as difficult as it can be, if people work together without all the hate and the so forth, it'll make it better for the kid. It just makes life easier to deal with. You know what I mean?
I think everyone has to kind of everybody has to eat a little crow at some point. You know what I mean? In order for the situation to work, and understand that it's just not going to be, the way that you want it. You know what I mean? You can go back later on. The way I look at it personally, they're my kids for the rest of my life. They're not just my kids right now. So at any point, throughout our lives, we can still go back and we can, as best as possible, bridge whatever gaps are missed, along the way, right? Because it's a for everything, and it's a journey. It's not just right now. And it took me a long time to realize that. So my first son's mother, I probably put her through the most. You know what I mean? Like, no, it's going to be like this. This is what it is. And, we fought every day, every week, every weekend. But as I've gotten older and I've understood, I understand things a little differently with a different approach. I'm able to take a more mature approach to co-parenting, and, it works. It works.
Yeah, it's crazy, Blake, because I put my first wife through the ringer because we were so young. So I really put her through it. And now at this more mature age, we're like just the best of buddies. Right. We call each other on the phone, talk for an hour. She comes down to visit. I go to visit. She's in New Jersey now. All the kids and grandkids get together. So it's nice. But the eating the crow part, the pain of that's the difficult thing. But once you get through that and get to the other side, it's a wonderful thing,
Yeah, and I have a similar situation with my oldest son's mom. We talking more now than we did, when we were fighting to raise him, right? Because we both kind of grown and we've learned and we understand what it is. And I don't put it just on her. It was me as well with my idea of what parenting was at 21 years old, right? So I can take a situation and look at, like, my first son. I remember, like, he fell out. Maybe it was like a Target or Walmart. I remember he fell out in a Walmart, and I turned around and gave him the look of death, like, you want to catch it right here in the store. Yeah. And by the time I got to my third son, my youngest, when he fell out in the store, I just looked at him and I kept walking, and this woman was like, your son is over here. And I'm like, yeah, when he's tired, he'll get up. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of evolve just as a person and as a parent to recognize that some things aren't as big a deal as, what they would have been. So it's definitely an evolution. Definitely evolution in parenting.
Yeah. So we fast forward a little bit. Obviously, you don't have any trouble getting women. You said you've always been chosen. I'm the one doing the chasing. So how did you end up on Ready to Love? Why Ready to Love?
So I didn't know anything about the show. I had never seen the show. I got a call from the producer. Well, it wasn't the producer. It was someone from the show. It could have been a producer. I don't know. And I thought it was a crank call, right? So I just kind of hung up like, okay, whatever. And then I got a text message saying, no, like, I'm really so-and-so. Check the link, blah, 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 blah. And they call back. And we had a couple discussions because I was saying that TV doesn't really fit my character. I was like, I'm pretty straight. I'm pretty direct, and they were like, no, 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 it's going to be great. And I talked it over with the people closest to me. And they were like, you know what, just do it and take it as an experience, right? Something that you can check off and say that you've done in your life. So I was like, you know what, I'm pretty open-minded. Let's go for it and we'll do it. And that's kind of how I got into it.
Sort of like a bucket list type thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't on my list before, but it's an opportunity, right? So an opportunity presents itself. You choose to jump on or not. And I always tell people if the opportunity comes up, take it. So I'm just, living my own words.
So you come into the mixer. You're on the show now. You come into the mixer. You see all these beautiful women there. The guys are there. What women or two or three struck you first immediately when you said, "Oh, she might be the one"?
I thought that all of the women were attractive, in their own way. Everyone was different. I was the last one to come in. So by the time I came in, everyone was already sitting down and engaged. So I just had a slower approach. I knew going in that I wasn't going to physically select anyone until at least the second time that I met everyone. So I didn't have anyone that I could say that I was drawn to when I first walked in. It was like, oh no, this is going to be the one, or this is who I think my person is.
Right. Every season, Blake, we've watched Ready to Love. The editing, the narrative, that production they have to have a villain, right?
Yes.
Now, this season, it was you for most of the season, and then Tony kind of took the mantle from you at some point.
Right.
But why do you think they wanted to turn you into the villain this season?
Honestly, I think there's a couple reasons. Number one, I was the oldest. I think I had the thickest skin. And I think that I was at a point in my life where everyone else wasn't. And I think that they knew that was going to be an area of contention, right? Being 45 and having kids and having grown kids, right? Being of age that I could actually be a grandparent right now. God forbid, Jay, don't make me a grandparent. I'm in a room with, some women who haven't had any kids yet, right? Who are just starting out in their attempt at life and relationships. So I think that was bound to create some type of, friction. I also think, some of it could have been too, I was probably a little challenging at times for production. They'd be like, Blake, say this. And I'd be like, no, I'm not going to say that, right? And we're like, Blake, do this. No, I'm not going to do that. Only because I wouldn't do anything that wasn't in my character, right? I wouldn't do anything that I wasn't really doing. And it was nothing bad, right? The show isn't necessarily scripted to where they want me to read a script, but they may have wanted me to react to someone, a particular way, right? Look at them and give them the side eye. Like, no, that's just not how I am. So I think they knew that it was only a matter of time that I was going to say something that was going to, that was going to stir the women up. And I think that what they did was they cut the stuff that I said to create the narrative. So everything that I said that they showed, I said, but they didn't show the entire conversation. They took the snippet, left the snippet as what it was, and you had your bad guy.
The thing, Blake, we had many discussions, obviously, on you throughout the season. Also with Corvea, right? Now, she led with money. I want a guy with money. I want to be taken care of, blah, blah, blah. Right. And I took issue with it. But the women were like, well, she know what she wants. It's a woman that know what she wants. And we would go back and forth, right? Now, when you said early on, I don't want any more children, they wanted to convict you for it. And I'm like, what's the double standard? Why do you think that was?
Right. So remember when I said when we were talking, we're like, well, what am I going to talk about on the channel? Like this right here. Right. I think that what happens is, I think that just culturally, we're just used to certain things where women can have standards and desires and men can't. right? And it's almost like there's an expectation that the man is supposed to provide the idea and the life, that the woman is looking for. It's a very difficult position to be in, because I didn't say anything bad about a specific person. All I said is I don't want kids.
Right.
But I think what that did to some of the women, they had an idea of who they wanted, or who they wanted to talk to, or what they would want, from a specific person, or probably me within that situation. And then I became the bad guy, right? Because I want something different than what they want. And that's why I think a lot of the fighting that I did on the show was to just hold my ground, to say, no, like, I know what I want. I know what I'm willing to do, and I know where I'm willing to go. So that was the thing with Corbeil.
That's well and good, Blake. I think though, my observation from a woman's standpoint is that some things that you said, in terms of to the women who were closer to your age, more mature on the show, that didn't already have children, like later on saying to Morgan that, well, you didn't say it to her, you actually said it about her, that she would, she wanted to have children at any cost.
Nope, never said that. But I can fill in for you. We can have this convo.
Okay.
We can have this convo. Let's have this
combo, because we're going to be back on your channel pretty soon. Gentlemen's Code, by the way. We'll be having these combos. So come on.
So what happens in those situations is, again, it's the same thing, right? I met Morgan. I didn't know Morgan at all. And we're on a dating show. So we're supposed to figure out, who we're compatible with. So as a man who's not looking to sleep with you and who's not looking to get anything from you, I'm checking our compatibility for what we may be compatible for down the road. I don't want to know if we can have dinner right now. Of course we can. I think you're attractive. You're attracted to me, but what else, right? What goes on past that? So the question that was asked of Morgan was about her dating. She doesn't have any children. And I asked her if, what her situation was. And Morgan said that she refuses to fall in love with a man that is not going to give her kids. This is what she said. Okay.
Right.
So I said, oh, okay. And as you mentioned, right, she's a little more seasoned than some of the other ladies there. I said, well, do you have a point where you would back up off that? Like, do you have an age perhaps where you're like, well, if it doesn't happen by this age? And she's like, no. With all of the modern advances in science, she's not giving that up. So I said, okay, so then let me ask you, because I just want to be clear and make sure that I understand. God forbid you're 50, 52 years old and you still don't have a kid. You still won't be with the man if he's not willing to give you a kid. And she said, yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
And then she thought about what she was saying. And then she said, I'm trying to attack her dream. I never put down what she said she wanted. I didn't say, oh, that's dumb. I didn't say that's stupid. I just said, okay. So I don't know where this backlash came from with, people being upset. But if we're evaluating each other to see if we're a match, maybe you can tell me what I'm missing, right? I'll be open now. Tell me what I'm missing that made those questions bad questions.
No, it's not. Again, it's not the question. It was, and I don't know if it's editing, but it seemed to be between the expressions on your face and some of the key points when they were talking about having children. It just seemed to be that you were looking down or frowning upon the women who were, like I said, maybe a little bit more mature, that still wanted to have children because they did not have any. They were waiting for marriage.
No, so I understand what you're saying. Yeah. My issue comes with seems to be, because seems to be is how someone chooses to take something. And it was never my intention to be insulting to anyone. Okay. Right. But if you have your truth and what you want, right, and you can say that you want a child, even if you're 50, and you won't be with the man that's not going to give you one.
Right.
Then why can I not decide that you're not someone that I would be interested in dating?
Not even a problem. Dating is for collecting data. So you two aren't aligned. So absolutely. You're right and she's right. For her life, she's right. And for your life, you're right.
Right. So, and that's why when you said, well, it seemed like, I'm like, well, I don't know how something could seem like that other than someone, receiving it, because I didn't use words, that were putting her down or talking bad about her or anything like that. I think that, I don't know. I don't know I would have to ask her, right? I did attempt to ask her, what about the conversation, bothered her, but we just never got there. So, but yeah,
What
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, what about let's move to the date that you had with Johnny. Do you feel like in hindsight, do you feel like you were respectful to her? Do you feel like you gave her
No, that was
whatever?
all. That was
Huh?
all. That was all. That was all editing.
In what
Jody and
way?
I had
What
a
way
we
was
we
it
had a
editing?
regular date. She actually talked the most, and what they did is they just showed facial expressions to make it seem like there was no conversation that was had or that there was dead air. Um, that's not how that went. Now, some of the conversations were a little awkward, right? But to
Mhm.
me, that's to be expected. I mean, Jonique is a lovely young lady, but I think she's like 30 years old,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
She was 7 when my son was born, right?
Mm.
So we're gonna miss each other in life experience, and we're gonna miss each other and a lot of things when you talk about pursuing a life together. She wants a family, she wants kids, she's still learning herself in a lot of ways. So again, I didn't put her down in any way. I didn't say anything bad, about her. I think that editing did a couple, tricks. So let me tell you how this works. So let's start here. What happens is you and I can have a conversation, and we'll have a conversation. But
Right.
when they play it back, they'll just play you talking to me. And if I'm looking over here right now, waiting for you to start, they're
Mhm.
not going to play the whole conversation. They're going to play that conversation, and then they're going to cut to me looking off to give the impression that I was not engaged in the conversation that you were having.
Mm.
Ah, I see.
Right.
Mm.
So for me, I really don't have anything for that because we had an entire conversation. Right. She did a lot more talking, than I did. To the point that production was like, all right, time out, Joni, give him an opportunity to ask some questions as well. But that's
Okay.
just not the story that they wanted to present.
One
Yeah.
one last question to this, Blake. Maybe you can
So
answer this from your perspective and your experience there on the show. What was it like when you, like, let's say at the mixer, you may have talked to certain women and you wanted to get to know them more? Were you able to request dates with said women?
I didn't get any dates that were requested. No, I personally did not get to request any dates.
No.
Production set me up with the dates, right? Which is why there were very limited dates with Suan and I. We just kind of took it upon ourselves to date and to have a conversation and to talk outside of the show. But no, I mean, production decides who they're going to send people on dates with.
Ah, I
So
see.
even with the situation like Jonique, like production already knew that there wasn't a connection there, right? But again, we're on the show for entertainment, so I'm not mad at anything, that's happened. I knew what I was signing up for when I came on. I mean, it's entertainment. So
Mm.
a lot of these dates that they put together was because they knew that there would be some awkwardness that they'd be able to, use for the show.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Blake,
One,
because it's kind of going back
one last
to
Very good.
yeah, kind
one
of.
last one
Okay,
last
go ahead, Aubrey.
question.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Aubrey.
One last question. One of our viewers and soon to be members, Donna D, wants to know if what was going on with you and Cynthia and why you feel like the connection didn't grow, because we saw that there was an initial attraction there on your part or Cynthia's part. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So Cynthia and I dated. She was my other connection, as strong as Suan. I always mention like the boat. I had two gifts when I went on the boat. Two bracelets. I gave one to Suan and I gave one to Cynthia. Um,
Mm.
and we had a really good connection. But I think for me, Suan was just a little in a different space in her life than what Cynthia was. Right. I had a connection. She's a beautiful young lady. We laugh and we joke. But she's we were kind of missing each other on the experience part of, where Suan and I had already been married, right? Suan and I already had kids with our, divorced partners, if you will. So there were just some things that I leaned more heavily towards on that side. And
Hmm.
the other thing, you only get a good 2 weeks to really make a decision on who you're going to date, right?
Oh,
And you don't
okay.
get that many dates. You don't get that many dates. So with that being the case, I went with what I felt, made the most sense, what I was, most attracted to, and that was it. But I have no issues with Cynthia. I don't know if the show would have gone on longer and they would have allowed us to be a little bit more, natural in our processes, if things would have been different. But, I was happy with the decision that I made. But I had no issues at all with Cynthia.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. I think, Blake, too, going back to when you initially said, I have 3 children, I don't want any more. But then later on down the road, what had people scratching their head was you said, well, maybe 87%.
Nah, so I think a lot of this stuff is just the internet and people reading the internet, but not really watching, what actually happened, even though it was cut, because it happened at the same time. And I think it was Corbeil who was like, are you having any kids? And I was like, nope. And she was like, no more. And I was like, nope. And she was like, she asked another question and I was like, nope, 87% sure that I am not having any more kids. Right. So that pretty much meant I'm not having any more kids. Now, if that's, I really don't know what else to say over that, right? Like 87%, sure, I'm not having any more kids. If I had
why the number 87?
Well, it's 87 because I'm only 50% of my life.
He
right?
couldn't say 69. That wouldn't have been appropriate.
That'd have been half a kid right there, right? but let's take a situation where I meet someone who is truly financially independent, right? And truly capable. And we have retirement already checked and we have everything aligned. And I am uber in love. And she's like, I want to have a kid and neither one of us have to work. Maybe there'd be a consideration there. Maybe that's that 14%, but that's unlikely, right? That is very unlikely. Not something I would bank on, but I was making the 87% just to say that it's slim to none chance that I would have kids. And it would have to be like an incredible situation. I think Mark Anthony, tried to explain it, but they gave him help for it. So,
yeah. And at this point, Blake, everything you said, set the show on fire because at this point, they were loving to hate you. They were loving to hate you, so to speak.
But you know what? And I think that's how the whole Jeffrey thing happened. But I just think it's interesting that I really didn't say anything to anybody. Right? None of these comments were made towards a specific person. It was all in just, what it is that I wanted and what I wasn't good with. So that's why I think it's interesting that it sets people off because the women got to say, oh, I don't want to deal with this person because they're short. Right? To me, that's way more offensive than this person wants something that I don't want. So, it was definitely an interesting time. But I think that the show played it up for more than what it was. Because it didn't really, that's not how it was in the actual production.
But on paper, and you can address this because it's kind of odd. On paper, you and Jeffrey were the perfect match. Okay, you got 3 children. She has 3 children. You don't want any more. She don't want any more. So it seemed to be a perfect match on paper.
No, to me, that's not. Let me stop you. That's not even a perfect match on paper for me.
No.
Right? No, not at all. No, not at all. Nothing against her. I would not. Oh, shit, I'm about to. So I would not. Wait, let me say this. I would have to strongly consider at 45, right? Different when I was younger. So only because I've gone through this already and it would be taking a step back. So again, let me be clear. This has nothing to do with the woman, right? It's no offense to the woman. Right. So make sure we throw that in there. When you say that's right. When you say that a woman is coming with 3 kids and the 3 kids don't have dads, right? That's not just a relationship now. Right. I'm looking at having 6 kids and I'm looking at more than just having a partner now. Right. I'm looking at having to provide for kids in the same way that I would provide for my kids. And there's a lot more that comes along with that. So at that point, it's getting outside of my goal for what it is that I want with my life, right? I'm trying to sunset. This person is still trying to begin and build. So taking all of those additional responsibilities, not being able to travel, not being able to do certain things, and the other person, the woman doesn't work, like that wouldn't have been a situation for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, as much as you can share, when
Sure.
you guys were on the boat, and of course the infamous truth or dare always comes up in the last few seasons or whatever. You pulled Jeffrey to the side, you took her to a separate place on the boat to try to explain something to her, but you couldn't seem to get it out. And she seemed very frustrated. What was it?
What she did was, so what happened by the second episode, now mind you, this is just the next day, right? So we shoot multiple episodes in one day. So we had the mixer. By the time we went to the mixer, we had the brunch the next day. By the end of the brunch is when she made this comment saying that I chose her and I said that she was the one and I found my dream woman and all of these things that just were flat out not true. And, me being the person that I am, I just didn't feel the need to address it because I was focused on my connections, right? I don't get involved in negative energy. I don't provide negative energy any attention unless I absolutely have to, right? So it had gone on. I talked to my connections and production was like, well, try and have a conversation with her about it. So I grabbed her on the boat to let her know that I had a problem because I had only heard what Jeffrey said. I didn't hear it for myself. I had the women that were in the lounge approach me with some of the things that were said. And I think Sue-Ann, during one of my dates, they call them the bubble dates, during the bubble date, had told me that she had said something. So when I sat down with Jeffrey, I was trying to have a conversation with her to say, I heard that there were some things that were said in the lounge. And then she cut me off immediately because she knew where I was going, right? Mm. And she said, well, tell me what you heard. And I was saying to her, I don't want to talk about what I heard. I want to talk about what you said, because I didn't want to get into an argument with, well, I didn't tell her that. I didn't say this to her. I don't want to talk about what you didn't say. I want to talk about what you did say that had the woman coming back to me to have this convo. And she just flat out refused to let me get that out. So at that point, I realized that she wasn't trying to problem solve. I realized she was just trying to have a moment. So I decided to just let it go, right? Once she left me, she went outside to Sue-Ann and said exactly what she said in the lounge, right? So that's when Sue-Ann said, well, if you can say it to me, why couldn't you say it to him 5 minutes ago, when you guys were sitting down? So for me, it was water under the bridge. I mean, it's not something that I put too much energy into because it didn't affect, the trajectory with my two connections.
Was you surprised when she kissed Mark Anthony? Because another good looking dude. I hate y'all, man. Just but
yeah,
another good looking dude.
He's another New Yorker. He's another New Yorker.
Yeah, another New Yorker.
He's a generation behind me. Was I surprised? Nah. I mean, no, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised at all.
Okay.
I mean, she connected with everybody, so it wasn't at all surprising.
Yeah. With the lifeline, with Corvea being voted off, you guys had a lifeline. And I know there's a lot of editing that goes on there. And it seemed like DeMario was the only one really fighting for Corvea. Yes. Is there anything that you can share that we didn't see about that lifeline scene?
Yeah, that was a brutal scene. That was a very brutal scene. No one wanted to extend the lifeline to her, and DeMario was definitely adamant, about it. I mean, he was very, very adamant about it. So, the exchange got a little heated, on the boat, and production stepped in. But he did not want her to go, and I think that at that time, I think Corvea had rubbed some people the wrong way, and it was pretty unanimous. Yeah, I mean, it was unfortunate. It was nothing personal against Corvea, but the question is, who do you have the least amount of connection with, right? I think people think that you get eliminated based off of who you don't like. And it's not who you don't like, it's who you're least connected with. And I think that no one else was connecting with Corvea, based off what she wanted and the approach that she was taking. But I don't think it had anything to do with her, for who she is, right? She's not a bad person. It's just what she wanted just didn't align with what the other guys wanted.
Right. And, automatically, for some reason or another, as Sue-Ann defended you, Jeffrey chose to attack her and call her Advocate Sue, and this thing continued throughout until Sue-Ann left. So why do you think Jeffrey began to target her in that fashion? Because Sue-Ann was not attacking her.
Well, Jeffrey liked me in the beginning, and you know, when we went left, I think it just, you know, I think it just was something that she held on to. You know, because it wasn't just Sue-Ann. Even when we had our double date, you know, and I think I was doing the collages, you know, she kept trying to shoot shots and come for me, and I just refused to engage her then. We were putting together collages from these magazines, and they were like, you know, cut out images that resonate with you. And I went through the books, and I was cutting out like all men's watches, and that's what I was creating for my collage. And she was like, oh, well, you know, Blake is superficial, you know, his is watches and it has everything to do with money. And, you know, and I had to stop her and say, actually, it's about time, because time is the most valuable commodity. It has nothing to do with the watches, right? So from her, it was always these little pop shots that I just never chose to engage in. And, you know, I just kind of let her have it. I think even now she's still, you know, moving around a little bit, but, you know, it is what it is. I don't really mind.
That double date with Blue, you and Blue, Marcia and Jeffrey. I guess you're speaking about that's when you did the watch thing. Was it that time?
Correct.
Did you know they were setting that up? Because the audience scene right away is like, why are these two in the same room? Why is Blake and Jeffrey here?
For me, I never knew who I was going on a date with until I walked in.
Okay, wow. So
I never knew. They would just say, Blake, show up to this place. This is the restaurant. You got a date, and that's it. You don't know who you're going in to sit down with until you get there.
Wow. And I'm like, why would they do that? But I mean, we know why they do it.
Entertainment, right? That's what they're here to do. That's what they're here to do. So, yeah.
Yeah. And how did you come up with the? What made you start calling Sue-Ann Susu? What made you comfortable enough to start calling her Susu?
I mean, I feel like we already had a vibe. Like to be honest, like we already had a vibe. You know, there was a lot that happened between us that they just didn't show. You know, some things, you know, on camera, some things off camera, because we really almost created our own narrative. Right? They didn't send us on dates. Right? The only time that they would send me with her was for her to tell me whether or not I was getting eliminated or not. So. I think we were doing the bounce thing. That was a very awkward, very weird experience. And I don't know, it was just something that came up in the moment, right? It was a pet name, right? I wanted her to know that she was different from, you know, everyone else that I was dating on the cast, and just kind of give her that comfort, solidifying, you know, where my interest was, you know, kind of somewhat early on.
And at this point now, for some reason, Jeffrey and Morgan, they're kind of building a friendship or camaraderie, a lot of chemistry. They girls or whatever the case is.
Right.
So why do you think that happened? Why do you think these two got so close?
I think that they're on the same wavelength, you know, with their outlook on life and dating, and where they see themselves in dating, right? Where they place themselves as the prize, and where they place themselves as the people that need to be catered to when it comes to dating. And I think that they were really able to feed off of each other and each other's energy, because, you know, they were taking the same ride.
Yeah. And you had a lunch or a brunch or a dinner, whatever, with Morgan, and she was kind of letting you have it. You know, you're not here for the right reasons. You know, you're selling these women a dream, blah, blah. But she was saying a whole bunch of things. Right. You were just sitting there like, okay, whatever kind of thing. So what didn't we see, and what were your exact feelings? What was going through your mind at that time during that scene?
So I didn't know that number one, I didn't know when I showed up that it was going to be her. Right. So I showed up and I was like, okay, well, this is an opportunity for me to have a conversation to clarify the conversation that you and I just had, or the three of us just had, over her dating. The baby thing. I had heard some murmurs that she may have been bothered by it, but I didn't know why. So I sat down with her and I took it as an opportunity to say, look, I want to apologize if I made you feel some type of way, over this. And then she said, I said, but I need to know, what I said that made you feel this way. And she was like, well, how can you apologize if you don't know what you've done? So I said, I'm apologizing for how I made you feel, because nothing that I said was meant to make you feel what you're feeling, but I want to know what you took issue with. We couldn't get through that. It was very weird because we were actually, laughing and joking right before, she went off on her tirade. So it was a little left, but I think that at that time, I think she was kind of, just riding for Jeffrey. I don't think it really had anything to do with anything other than, in the beginning, the women, they didn't know me, right? So Jeffrey showed up with this story and the women rode with it like, well, it must be true because she said it. But as time went on, the women began to see, that it was less and less likely that that was a comment, that was made to her. And I think Morgan just felt the need to kind of stand by, her girl on that. Because later on, she and I were cool. But when she went off, I didn't really think anything of it, to be honest with you. I mean, she's entitled to her feelings, right? Even if she meant it, even if it wasn't Jeffrey, whatever it is, she was venting. And I just didn't feel the need to address it. I mean, I didn't agree with her, right? And trying to have a conversation with someone when they're in that space isn't going to go anywhere. She's coming from a place of her mind being made up, right? She wasn't trying to have a conversation. She didn't know me. So I just said, okay, I'd let her have it. Just let her have it.
And what was it about Cynthia where you kind of pulled back, or did Cynthia pull back? Was it because of Anthony? Was it because you guys had developed enough chemistry? Why you couldn't continue forward with Cynthia?
Well, number one, because they told you that you needed to make a choice. So it was actually me and Anthony, Cynthia, and Sue-Ann. And the four of us were each other's connections, right? So that's how it started out. And, as we went through the journey, we began to lean towards our partners and figure it out from there. It wasn't about not being able to finish the journey with Cynthia. I just didn't feel like, I felt like Cynthia and I were only about 70% aligned, right? Whereas I felt like Sue-Ann and I were a little bit more aligned than what Cynthia and I were.
And wait a minute, hold it right there. So, what was that based upon for you? That 70% and not closer to, let's say, 90%? Because and before you answer that, where were you percentage wise with Sue-Ann?
So I'm gonna go with 87. I was 87% with Sue-Ann.
But not 69, but not 69%. But okay, all right.
I was 87% with Sue-Ann. 70 with Cynthia, only because Cynthia had never been married, and having had someone that was married, right? Maybe if Sue-Ann wasn't on, then that would have been a different conversation, and a different trajectory for us. But having been married and having divorced and understanding, the challenges of marriage, right? Understanding the things that come along after marriage, understanding what rebuilding looks like, understanding that marriage is not the dream. It's not a fairy tale, right? It's not the day you get married, whatever you felt the day before is not gone, right? If you didn't trust the person the day before and you thought the person was suspect the day before, you're going to think the same thing the day after you get married, right? So there's a lot that
it does not change it. You're right. You're absolutely
exactly.
It's not a magic pill just getting married.
Exactly. And when I listen to her speak, and a lot of the women, right? They romanticize marriage in a way that I was not able to meet them, because I saw it as more of a team life building and journey than I did providing a fantasy for a person.
Okay.
So yeah, it was nothing against her, just didn't align.
Our very own moderator extraordinaire, Ellen V, wants to know, is 87 your lucky number?
No, 87 is not my lucky number, but that's I feel like whenever I say I'm sure of something, like 87 is the most I can be sure. You know what I mean? Like,
I see.
You gotta leave a little room in there.
I just want you to backtrack. I know we talked about this, we kind of moved past it, but we have another member of our channel, very supportive, Roro for real, wants to know, what was it like when you first met Jeffrey? So if you can go back to that moment, what were your thoughts and what were your impressions initially, not later in the show, but initially?
I think that Jeffrey has a good initial first impression. right?
It's very, very
Initially
beautiful.
she
Hmm.
comes across as genuine, initially. And the funny thing is, I do think that she is genuine, but she's genuine to what she believes, not necessarily genuine to the situation, right?
Hmm.
So I don't think a lot of what she does, I'm sure some of the things she does maybe with malice intent, but I think a lot of what she does, I don't even think that she knows or she understands, that she's doing it or what she's putting across. And then I
Okay.
think from there she goes into defense mode. Um, so in the
So
beginning we had a convo. So this is what happened. All right, I'll tell you what happened. So what happened was
yes.
when we had the mixer on day two, that's when they brought Cynthia in. And and I was sitting with Jeffrey when they brought Cynthia in. And Morgan made a comment when they brought her out, and I was like, you're fine, like just be cool, whatever, whatever. And Cynthia stopped to talk to me last. And I was sitting with Jeffrey when it happened. So Cynthia came over and was like, can I talk to you? And she pulled me to the side. And when I was talking to Cynthia, Jeffrey came and she sat behind me. And while Cynthia was talking to me, Jeffrey scratched me down my back. So I turned and I was like, I'm sorry. Like, do you want to join the conversation? And she was like, no, I'm going to move around. And Cynthia was like, yeah, please do. And Jeffrey moved around. It was after that the story came up about me wanting her and everything else. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, pause. So after she did that, I
Hmm.
pulled her to the side and was like, look, we're on this journey. We're all getting to know each other. Like, can we just kind of be easy? And she was just like, no, you can't tell me how to feel. You can't tell me how to act. So I said, okay. And at that point, I knew, there was no talking to her as far as a connection or anything goes. And then it was that next day that I got the comment about, her being the one, finding my lady, and all these other things that she said that was never said. So
Okay.
I didn't have a connection with her after, experiencing that first piece, And it's funny because I'm gonna throw my man Mark Anthony under the bus right now. Shout out to Saint. Um,
Oh Lord.
when Saint came on and they asked him, they didn't show this. They said, "Who is in your bottom?" They always start with who's in your bottom. He's like Jeffrey, and he said somebody else. Then they were like, "All right, well, who's in your top?" He was like Jeffrey. So they were like, how is she in your top, in your bottom? And he's like, I don't know her. Maybe I'm cynical. He's like, but something just doesn't seem right. I don't trust it. So it was funny. And, I didn't say anything about her to salt her with any of the other guys, but it was cool to watch him, pick it out. And, he approached accordingly. But, Jeffrey is just Jeffrey. Again, I don't have any ill will towards her. Even though I hear, well, she says this about you and she does this. I just feel like as men, it just kind of comes with the territory, and we're not supposed to, engage in things just on this level. You know what I mean? Like if she has a real problem, she knows how to reach me. But I don't think that she really does. I think it's just, a part of what she does.
Do you feel I saw you on another interview and you spoke a little bit about emotional intelligence. Do you feel that sometimes with um, could be Jeffrey, could be not, but with sometimes with people they're just not self-aware and that affects how people perceive them?
Definitely. Again, like you asked, this is another conversation that we're going to have on the podcast on both sides. But yeah, I think that emotional intelligence is something that we've really taken for granted when we look at relationships. And I think that having that emotional intelligence and that wherewithal and that awareness of self would really help, like a Morgan or a Jeffrey, understand where people are coming from, right? Because when you're immediately defensive and when you immediately think people are coming from you, and you have people that are just trying to have conversations with you, right? Or people that may just be trying to get to know you, I think that can sometimes be a hurdle, and it's a hurdle that you don't necessarily see. So I definitely think that all of us are at different stages of our understanding and growth within that emotional intelligence area.
Mm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Right.
one last comment or question. So is Mark Anthony's nickname Saint, and what is that from?
Yeah. So it's he goes by Saint. I believe it's a part of his last name.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
it's a part of, he has a French last name, and Saint is a part of that. So that's his
I
nickname.
gotcha.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. A couple more things, Blake. We're at the top of the hour here.
You good. Come on. Keep it going.
Um,
Keep it going. I'm going.
but
He's warmed up now.
you warmed up now, yeah. But 87 may not be your lucky number, but you actually set the record, Blake. You should be proud of yourself. You set the record this season for being on the chopping block every week and surviving.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So why do you think you survived every week with all this vitriol coming your way?
Because so it was only 2.5 people that really took issue with me. Right. So that's a part of how editing and, you know, how they presented it. If everybody wanted me to go home, you know, I would have gone home. Right. Really cool, you know, still with Mercedes, really cool with, you know, Morgan. I'm sorry, not Morgan. She's going to shoot me. With Marcia. You know, she's going to shoot me. To the point that like we talk regularly, and like we're cool. You know, I have my core group there, but it wasn't all the women who felt that way, right? So, you know, Cynthia. So they don't show my connection with Cynthia. They don't show, you know, the good conversations with like a Mercedes or with like a Marcia to get people to understand that everyone did not want me to go home. They just showed the energy from Jeffrey. They show the energy from Morgan, right? And then they show the energy from Jonique, which to be honest, I don't even know what Jonique's issue was. I still to this day don't know, you know, what it was. I feel like she may have fallen victim to the rumor mill, as far as, you know, some of the things that went on. But I've never had an issue with Jonique personally.
Yeah. Wow. And when Suanne finally came around to leaving, you know, I said to Aubrey on the podcast, I said, with Suanne gone, Blake is going to leave. I mean, I just said that, you know,
Right.
because at that point, that was your only connection. So what did you feel when Suanne got voted off initially? What was your feelings initially?
So I knew that at some point, you know, that it was probably going to happen, because something that people again misunderstand, it's not a popularity contest, right? What they ask you is who do you not get who you not connected to. So if a person has clearly made their choice, right, and her choosing me, let's say, then all of the other guys are going to say Suanne because she is no longer available to date. So it's something that, you know, I knew would happen. Excuse me. For me leaving and making that decision was because I was courting Suanne. I was dating Suanne, and I was actually here to see if I could find someone, right? I came into the process open-minded and being open to meeting someone and accepting someone and all those things. So it only made sense for me to continue to pursue that relationship. I think because I still had the connection with, you know, previously had the connection with Cynthia and some other people, they thought that maybe I would go through and, you know, jump ship. But it wasn't really about jumping ship, you know, for me. Like I made a decision, I stuck to my decision, and I was going to see my decision through. And, you know, that's where I decided to go with it.
Well, we fast forward to the reunion.
Okay.
You guys are all there. Suanne says at the reunion, and we know Suanne's a busy woman. She on the Shankola Robinson case. She's a lawyer. She's very busy. You're a very busy man. You're all over the place. But she said on the reunion that you guys were currently dating, but we know this was filmed months ago. So
Right.
where are you guys now?
So I think we're just at a place where, you know, like you said, she's busy, I'm busy, you know, she's moving around. I think it's just become a little bit more, you know, more challenging with the real life aspects. I mean, you know, we're cool, you know, we're good. And I guess we're just, you know, figuring it out. You know, we're just.
Yeah. Well, two things from the reunion I want to get your opinion on. First, the relationship between Tony and Morgan. It seems toxic to the viewers. Okay, it's like they got this fire that's not healthy, but yet they're attracted to each other in some kind of way. What do you think about that kind of dynamic with these two?
So I think I'm in the minority, right? I think that they're the ones that are gonna last, you know, the longest, you know, out of everybody. You know, they remind me of that drunk uncle and that mean aunt, that say they can't stand each other and they hate each other and they fight every day, but they've been together for 40, 45 years already, right? That's how I put the two of them. I think some people, their love language is chaos, right? Chaos is, if the person is still willing to go through this and fight you, for some people, I think that attention, be it good or bad, is the connection. It lets the person know that they're loved. So I think that's why the two of them have been able to sustain like this. It's obvious that they're crazy about each other, right? It just makes it look like they're crazy all the way around, though. And that's the part that, you want to kind of back up from if you could.
Yeah. I've had this discussion with Aubrey on the air many times, and I've lived this. I know people who've lived this. Some people like to argue, fight, and fuss because it makes for passionate lovemaking, more passionate, more intense lovemaking in the makeup.
I think my button's about to hit the off button here now. This mic is being muted as we speak. No, I think that's like, but that's dysfunctional. Let's be honest and say that really actually is dysfunctional.
So again, I have the unpopular opinion to say, if it works, is it dysfunctional?
Well, okay. So how was it working with what we're talking about, Morgan and Tony, like, let's say specifically, right?
Correct.
So it's not working for them.
Well, what does not working mean? Because if they're together, right, then it's working.
You're saying they're together now?
I mean, from what I know, they're not. So for the show, they chose to not choose each other, right?
On the bridge, she chose. Yes, right.
Right. But at the reunion, when they're like, well, are you done with him? She couldn't say yes. You know what I mean? So she did all that cursing him out, all of that stuff, but she couldn't say she was done with him. Right. Mm-hmm. So that connection to me, watching all that drama, right? All that passion, all that quote unquote dysfunction, they're still more connected than what I see from Cynthia and Anthony.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to get to. I was going to get to
as long as he doesn't mind his hair being on the pillow when he wakes up, then yeah.
I'll say it may not be healthy. Like, I'll meet you in the middle and say that relationship may not be healthy.
Okay, that's progress. That's progress.
But I don't know that I would call something dysfunctional if it actually works. You know what I mean? Like, we could sit back and I may go through my next 6 or 7 relationships, and the two of them are still, at each other's necks. He done been stitched up 6 or 7 times. She missing her front teeth, but they still waking up next to each other, right? Not healthy, but I mean, their relationship is standing the test of time. So, and I'm not saying that that's the case. I don't know what it's going to be, and I joke about the depth of how bad it will get. I really don't know, but they have a passionate connection. I mean, you got to think about it. Lyndon is the nice guy. Lyndon is funny, right? Lyndon is sweet. He's charming, right? Mm-hmm. She's like, yeah, I know, but Tony's more aggressive.
New York again.
And I think that's again, that, you say maybe not healthy. I say dysfunctional. I think that, though, here's the thing. I think there's patterns that people establish in their life early sometimes, and they're accustomed to those patterns. And for them, your brain actually is a machine, and it gets hardwired sometimes. And so the only way to unhardwire it is to really intentionally work on it. Mm-hmm. And so her rejection of Lyndon actually was a rejection of a more healthy type of attachment, in my opinion.
And I agree with you on paper. Like, on paper, I totally agree with you.
On paper, because if she got with Lyndon,
and she's like, man, he doesn't raise his voice at me, right? He doesn't say anything when I get dressed over me not wearing any clothes. Like, how can he possibly care about me? It doesn't matter what it looks like on paper, right? The heart wants what the heart wants, is what I'm getting at. And to me, it only becomes unhealthy or dysfunction based off of whether or not the opposite partner can handle it, right? So let's say you have a woman or man, you have a person who every time they get angry, they break everything in the house, right? From the outside, we'll say, okay, that's not healthy. But if the person that lives in the house doesn't care, they just decide they're going to buy plastic cups and plastic plates and plastic forks, and they go on with life. That's an unhealthy way of bridging that gap, but it keeps that relationship together because it may not be important to that person, or that person may not care that this person is breaking stuff up, right? So again, I'm not condoning it, and I totally agree. Like, no, it's not healthy, but we have to figure out what harm is being done, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, because listen, Morgan has stated that she had never in her entire life been in love, but she was passionate enough about a guy to put nair in his hair.
Right.
And
that she said
that
she said cheated on her, that she said she wasn't in a relationship with.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I caught that too. I'm like, well, how does that work? If you're not in a relationship, how can he possibly cheat on you?
Right. So, it's one of those things where I learned a long time ago. And again, I think it's growing up in the city and just seeing some wild, crazy things. For me, coming from the city, a lot of stuff that I thought was normal, kind of like you're saying about being hardwired. When I went over to the burbs in Jersey, things would happen. And I'd be like, you guys are surprised by this? Like, this is what I know. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't. So right. I think that I have a different perspective only because I've seen it, from both sides. I don't think it's healthy. It's not something that I could do, but I couldn't knock at Tony if Tony decided that this is what he wanted to do, for the next 20 or 30 years.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Blake, because we saw Tony, and Tony's a New Yorker. All of us, right. seem to have these kind of behaviors, it seems at times, but him and Natasha had this thing. Apparently, they didn't go into detail, or they tried to, scoot the curb with it. But who was the first to kind of drop the T to production to say whether we actually did something, whether we were intimate, whether what was going on there?
So wait, put a pin in that. So this person just said, Morgan ain't going near me, the devil is a lie. When we were in the men's lounge, and she told the story, Tommy was like, so you and Lyndon don't see that as a red flag? And Tony's like, nah. And we're looking at him like, why not? He's like, because she's not going to do that to me. And I'm like, what? Don't you think the dude that had it happen to him thought that she wasn't going to do it to him either? Right. So right. I think that's just a part of Tony to what you're asking, right? About the New York part. It's just different. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just saw the question and I wanted to address it.
Yeah, it was the Natasha thing, okay. With her and Tony going back and forth. Who said what first? Who let production know first? How did you see that?
Natasha let production know what was going on. Natasha let production know. We were all kind of blindsided with it, on the reunion. Natasha let it be known, but Tony put himself in a situation. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, I can't speak to where Tony was, with that piece, but we got a good idea of Tony and how Tony is. And it's not, it's just not surprising. You know what I mean? It's not surprising. What I don't like in defense of Tony, to defend Tony, what I don't like is when people on this platform put themselves directly in the mix of the chaos and then step back and say, wow, I can't believe I got hit or I got hurt or it affected me. That was my only issue. I mean, I feel like she knew what she was kind of getting into when she decided to talk to him based off of, the fact that we're on a dating show and he's going to date other people and, there will be connections and, all these things to be surprised that he was actually pursuing someone. I felt like maybe a little bit more accountability could have been, taken there, not to excuse anything that was done, but just to be fair through the situation.
I mean, sometimes it's just hard to admit for some women to admit that they just have an itch that need to be scratched. It's nothing special. It's nothing. I just need to get hit off. I need my back broke for a minute.
But you know what? I'm a piggyback on that, and it's not just that. I think sometimes women want to be.
Women in 20 and 23 do not have any problem saying they need what they need, and you're just from a very outdated mode at that point when you're thinking, Alex. Really. That's very
Some still do, Aubrey.
I don't think he's outdated. I think it's progressed a little bit. I think there's a little bit of truth in that, but along with that, it's wanting to be chosen, right? Like a lot of times the things that we go through in dating right now for the men and the women, I'm not putting this just on the women. A lot of times they want to date to say that they have the person. Like it's not really even about the person. It's almost like winning. Like I got him or I got her, and it has nothing really to do with the relationship. You know, so I think that there might have been some of that in there. And I think when she got blocked and realized like she was not, you know, the priority, I think that's when everything hit the roof.
I mean, getting blocked is a huge insult when you shared yourself with somebody and all of a sudden you're blocked.
Right.
You know, but that's a huge
you shared
insult.
yourself with somebody that you knew was dating someone else.
Mm.
So that's the part that I can't take away. You know, like you got to understand, you know, what it is. So, you know, back in the day, if you was going to be a sneaky link, the sneaky link stayed sneaky, right? The sneaky link didn't go out and be like, all right, you know, this is what it is.
Right.
Wait. What part are we talking about? Who's the sneaky link at this point, Blake?
So if Natasha knew that she got voted off and she knew that Tony was going to be dating and she knew that he was still on, that means that he's dating someone, right? Mm-hmm. So you already know what's going on with him. You know that you left and you decided to continue this situation with him, you know, while he was going on his journey. So to now put it out because you're feeling away, to me, that's the sneaky link part, right? Because you weren't the person who was in the limelight. You weren't the person who was on TV with him, being seen with him and all these other things, right? And I don't mean sneaky link to be degrading to her. I'm just saying in a situation where you're deciding to deal with someone that you know is dealing with someone else, right? Mm-hmm. Back in the day, there was a precedence, right? You knew kind of where you were. You didn't blow up the whole spot just because you had a bad day or you know the person didn't give you what you wanted for that day.
Yeah, because it's hard for me. It's hard for me to believe that she even thought or had a notion that her and Tony would ride off into the sunset. I can't even believe that she would even think that. It doesn't make sense.
I don't think she thought that, but I think what threw the wrench in it, at least from what I'm seeing as a viewer and what I'm hearing in the background, is that it was really actually Morgan saying it on the air as they were taping, because you can look back at that scene and see that clearly Tony was surprised that she said that in front of the cameras because he had told her that. So really, it's Morgan that blew up the spot, if you ask me.
Right, but Natasha could have left it at we were dating, right? She didn't have to say, you know, that we have been physically intimate and, you know, all these other things. Like,
but there's reports that she's saying that she did not say that.
Say again? No. There's what was said to production, right? This became a thing because something was said to production, right? So I understand what everyone is saying on the outside, but production knew this was going to come out, which is why they set up the scenario against Tony for it to come out. It wasn't a surprise like on the couch. Right? So, and again, someone said Natasha was not a sneaky link. I never said Natasha was a sneaky link, right? I talked about the roles that people played. The roles that people played.
Yes.
When dating other people. All right. So I don't want nobody to go back and be like, oh, Blake called you a sneaky link. No.
I'm glad you clarified that. I think there's always, too, the thing of it is there's always a secondary conversation going on in the chat that is a little bit a part of what we're saying, and then it goes on, it goes off on its own.
Yeah, and I see it going left, so I want to clarify. What I'm saying is,
I appreciate
Natasha knew that Tony was dating, right? He knew that she was dating. I'm sorry, she knew that he was dating, but Morgan did not know. So for me, when I'm saying the sneaky link, I'm saying the person that knew that the person they were dealing with was dealing with someone else. That is what I'm saying. I'm not calling it Natasha a sneaky link.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Alex,
now, I was gonna say this thing. Now we're going to transition to Morgan and her feud with Marcia. Okay. Now Tony spent a lot of the reunion, from what we can see, we don't know how it was edited, sitting up under Marcia, huggy, and so forth. And Marcia said, we go out for drinks to eat regularly, but I keep him at an arm's length because I'm not going to play this game with Tony. But Morgan seems to have a problem with Marcia. What do you think Morgan's real problem is with Marcia?
that Tony wants Marcia. It became a real issue at the table. You know, when shout out to Lyndon, when Lyndon, you know, hit Tony with that 2-piece at the table when they got into their argument.
Right.
I think that was a real blow for Morgan to hear that, you know, while Tony is, you know, dealing with her and in her face, that he would have preferred that Marcia be there and not her.
Wow. And then to have him sitting there up under her the way he was, it was just, you know.
Well, that was more so him claiming his, you know, him claiming his position. You know,
yeah,
that was more so him.
Position? What position?
His number one spot. You know, the thing about it is, and I don't know.
Oh, so you're saying that Tony and Marcia at that point were connected?
No, his position with Morgan.
Oh, Morgan. Okay.
Is Morgan, right? But sitting up under Marcia came later on, right? Tony is crazy about Marcia. Well, let me not say that because I don't know what's going on with him and Morgan. On the show, you know, he was crazy about, you know, to be fair, he was crazy about both of them. Those were his two connections.
That's what it seems like, right?
Right. Those were his two connections. The problem with Tony was, for production, not my problem with Tony. The problem with Tony was Tony never wanted to send anybody home. Tony didn't want to send anybody home. Tony wanted to have time with everybody. So, you know, when he had to choose between the two, I don't know what his process was. I don't know what happened. But, you know, Marcia wound up leaving. I don't know if he thought that she wouldn't leave. Like, I don't know what it was. And when she left, you know, he was pretty bummed out. And like Lyndon said, you know, he had approached us and was like, you know, would you guys be okay if I asked production to bring, you know, Marcia back? Right. So, you know, that part happened. And that's kind of what Lyndon revealed, you know, during the exchange that they had, the heated exchange that they had at the table.
And it takes a lot to pull something like that out of Lyndon. He's such a laid back, calm, cool, collected. So Tony must have really been up under his skin that day.
Well,
you know?
what happened at the table? I don't know where it went left. I mean, Lyndon is a very humble guy, right? And he and Morgan had like real conversations. You know, she let it be known that she was digging him, but Tony was her number one. So at the table, Linda kept saying, I don't know what you're mad about. Like, you know, Tony was like, you know, that's why you're sleeping alone. And that's why she's mine. And how do you feel I kissed her 4, 5, 6, 7 times? And at no time did Lyndon say, yeah, but I kissed her too. Lyndon was just like, all right, bro, like you got it. Like, because Tony didn't know that she had kissed Lyndon. So, you know, Lyndon's position was like, bro, you got it. Like, it's cool. And Tony just kept going in and kept going in. So at that point, you know, that's when Lyndon was like, all right, well, since you want to, you know, throw me under the bus. Because he said at the thing, he was like, I already knew that you were number one and I was number two. He was like, I don't know what your problem is. And then that's when I guess he had enough. And he was just like, look, and the thing about Lyndon, shout out to Lyndon, he felt really bad after he did it. Like after that scene, he came to each of us and apologized. You know, he felt like he had gotten out of character and that's not, you know, what he wanted to portray. You know, he went and he apologized to Tony too. You know, they're cordial. You know what I mean? They're cordial. You know, they're not best friends, but they definitely have respect for each other. And I respect that about both of them.
Yeah. And real quick, before we get on to what you're doing after Ready to Love, I just have one more question about the reunion. Your feelings about Cynthia and Anthony. She had a back to him. They're not working out. They're not together. What went wrong there? Was it Cynthia or was it Anthony?
Well, Cynthia took responsibility for it. And to be honest, I don't know where their connection, you know, went left. You know, they treated their connection a lot like Sue-Ann and I did, where we never really let anyone know, you know, what was going on. So shout out to Ant. You know, he's a gentleman as well. So, you know, I don't really know what the issue was with them, but I know that she took responsibility for, you know, whatever transpired. So
that's what I loved most about what Cynthia said, because she took all the responsibility, full accountability on herself. She never pointed the finger at him, which a lot of women would have done. Oh, if he treated me better. Oh, if he did this, he didn't want my child. Blah, you know, but she took it all, you know, and that's rare to see, you know. a woman do that. So I hold her in high regard for that.
A person do that.
No, women.
Men do that all the time. Stop it.
Mhm.
Oh
See
boy,
what I
I
go?
just can't wait to this channel of yours. I'm gonna be over there all the time picking at you guys.
You see what I go through, Blake? You see this?
I do.
He loves it.
But Blake, so after Ready to Love now, you're doing your own thing. How has this, if at all, changed your life, this experience? And what have you learned from this?
So I've learned the most, to be honest with you, from the men's standpoint, right? Because I've never gotten to date women and seeing how other men date women as well, or even the same women that I'm dating. You know, I'm a man, right? I know the woman experience with me one-on-one with women. And it was really eye-opening. You know, even something like a Tony, like to see something that, you know, goes on that I would have never seen before from this lens, right? From behind the scenes while standing next to Tony while it's going on. So it's just a different feeling, different than what you would get in a traditional sense. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it opened up a lot of conversations and a lot of questions and a lot of things that I think need to be discussed, you know, within a group of us as men.
Wow. So okay, so now Ready to Love is over. I understand that you now have a YouTube channel. You're going to be doing some podcasting. So tell us about the name of your channel, what you're going to be covering, and how can we support that?
So the podcast is called Gentleman's Code. And it's really conversations amongst men, kind of like what you and I were having, you know, before we were so rudely interrupted, you know, while we were trying to have our little exchange, right? No, but
the guys from New York calling somebody rude, isn't that funny?
But no, it's some of the very same things that we kind of touched on here, just in depth, like emotional intelligence of men and kind of where we feel things are missed, you know, with women. It is not a Kevin Samuels. It is not a women bashing segment. You know, it's really meant for the men to talk to men. I really find some value in being able to talk to the generation, you know, below us and kind of fill them in as well on some things. I also have a book that's coming out towards young adults, for young men in single family. Well, it's for the younger men, I'd say, you know, under 30, and it's for the teenagers and above, right? One of the challenges that I have being a dad, but not being able to be around my kids every day, is there's certain values and certain lessons that you would like to teach them. So this started out as a project that I was doing for my sons, to put together a book for them, that we were like, you know what, this is a really good idea that we think everyone that could benefit from, you know, single moms that are struggling with their boys, so forth and so on. So that's something that will be coming within the next month or two. And it kind of goes along with the channel, because a lot of the things that are going to be discussed in the book will be discussed on the channel as well. So I'm really excited about that. You know, I'd love to have you come on and we can kind of talk, because we're from a different generation, right? And I think it's important that we give the new generation what it was like for us, so that they can see that some of the things that they're going through aren't new. You know what I mean? Like my son will come to me with, you know, you won't believe what just happened. I'm like, yeah, I believe it. You know what I mean? Like that's a part of life. So, you know, it's really just a safe space for us to have those conversations and really try and progress, you know, the men's movement and supporting each other in what we're going through, and trying to also bridge the gap with the women as well. So it's supposed to be, you know, a space for positivity. Yeah.
Well, you have our full support here. Everybody go to Gentleman's Code, subscribe to that. I'm going to be over there. Aubrey will be there, so we can bash her over there.
Definitely.
No bashing of this person here. No,
definitely.
not at all.
We need a scapegoat, and I want to thank you for volunteering.
No, I'll be providing the feminine perspective, though, but that's fine.
Okay.
Well, you have no content there now, Blake, but do you have things lined up? First, second show, third show?
I do. We're going to do some mental health for men. So we'll have some conversations around the importance of mental health. We'll have a conversation on emotional intelligence, and then we'll have a conversation about the one I'm most excited about, where we feel men and women are missing each other in their communication.
Wow, that's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a big one. So we're gonna definitely support that, Blake. Be looking for you. We appreciate you so much, man. We held you way over the time.
Not a
But
problem.
it was a great conversation, man. I
Oh
really
wow,
appreciate
I
it.
didn't realize. I didn't realize
Yeah,
it was so interesting. Except for the
yeah.
you know the other part, it was so interesting. I didn't realize we had went over, but no, I'm very excited for you to start a conversation over on your channel. That's going to be awesome. I like to keep in touch with you. I've got some great suggestions. I've made many acquaintances and friendships over here on the YouTube side of the things. So
Okay.
definitely let me know, and I'll be chatting with you afterwards.
Definitely. And I from time to time I do polls on my IG, and my IG is champ underscore Fenimore, CHAMP underscore FENIMORE. And you should know that's from Fenimore Street
Yeah,
in
yeah,
New York. So
Brooklyn, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
There you go.
Mhm.
There you go. Aubrey wouldn't know about that. She don't know about that. But man, listen, we thank you, man.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
We're gonna support you. We're gonna drop you down, let you go on about your life. We'll definitely be in touch, man. We know how to reach you. And thank you so much again, man.
Hey man, I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank
All
you
right,
so
Aubrey.
much. Really appreciate you.
All right.
Right.
Aubrey, we can't keep having these good-looking guys up here shaming me. We got to get somebody
Well,
up here.
hey, look, you know what? That sounds like something that Blake can maybe help you with the mental health portion of it. I can't help you with that, but as long as the good-looking men want to come on this channel, so let's see if Mark Anthony's coming next. Because
Oh no.
hey, get ready.
Why I gotta be mental though? Why I gotta be mental? It's just,
Well, you know what? It's your payback for being over on IG and hitting all those like buttons on all those salacious lady of RTL, nearly nude photos.
who, me?
I mean, I can't go to anybody's channel to like their pretty photographs without A.W. Leath was here. Yeah. I mean, like the photo could have been out for like 20 minutes and you've already beat half of IG over there. It's ridiculous.
I think my account been hacked.
Mm-hmm. Whatever. You New York guys are all alike. All alike.
But thank you everybody for coming to talk to Blake and have this conversation with us. Blake was awesome. Appreciate him and all the other Ready to Love alumni.
Wait. Listen now, Blake, you still there? Would you mind coming back up for a quick second? We got a question to ask you on camera. He says it's okay. All right,
okay.
Hold on. All right, you know what? We did not get a chance. I'm sorry. My apologies, sir. We would like to extend you an invitation to be a part of our panel at some point at your convenience for Ready to Love as a commentator.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
I support it. I support it.
Be able to do? Okay, yeah, because I think it's always more fun to poke fun at the next group of people, right?
I know, right? It would be better if we could give them a warning about what they get ready to go through.
Well, now that's on your end. If you can reach out to them, that would be great. If you know who's going to be on coming up, it's in Texas. I think Dallas is the new city.
Yeah,
right?
Dallas is the next one. Yep.
Yeah, Dallas is the next one. Yeah. And Ron is on here pretty regularly, so we need more testosterone in the room.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely. Let's do it.
All right.
All right. Okay, we'll let you back down then. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
Appreciate you, Blake.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so Aubrey, I'm going to go in here and get ready for my night. I had a long day, beloved.
You and me both. Okay.
Yeah.
You and me both. Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been great. I will say Blake has me looking at him and I saw it later on. Like there's some things about him and I'm going to talk to him. I want to talk to him one-on-one because there's still some questions that I have, but I guess I will acquiesce that he's okay.
Mm-hmm.
What are you talking about, Monique? Bring on Febreze? What? I don't think I can handle Febreze.
Bring on Febreze.
Yeah, bring on the praise. I don't know about that.
Aubrey wants to have hot and heavy with Febreze.
No, sir. No, thank you. Stay tuned is obviously biased over on his channel. He says that Blake was the best cast member on this season of the show. Yeah, it was
Wow.
good. He definitely kept us entertained. I gotta say that.
He
Now you
kept
know
our
what? I
attention.
lost some money because of Blake because I really felt like after he dodged elimination so many times, I felt like I did a thumbnail that said undefeated with Blake's face on it, and I really thought that he and Sue Ann were going to make it to the end. So I lost money on that. I think when I bring him back up, I think he owes me a couple of dollars because I said he was going to make it all the way to the bridge scene, and then he didn't make it to the bridge scene. What's up with that?
Yeah, we thought that because Ron always says if you got one solid connection, you're supposed to make it to the end.
They've changed the rules, I think, this season, the last couple of seasons. It seems like they changed the rules on Ready to Love.
Yeah. I don't know.
Oh, so, wait a minute. Look at Monique. She says if Mark Anthony comes, she says she's gonna be naughty.
Yeah.
You and me both. I will have my fan on full blast, okay?
I'm gonna try to reach him and see. I'm gonna try to reach him.
Tonight, I just had my fan on 87% for Blake.
Well, I'll be on 69.
What about if we bring Cynthia on? Will it still be 69?
I would like for it to be.
Goodbye, folks. This is going way left. This is a PG-13 channel, okay? This has gone way left. Folks, we thank you. We appreciate you being here so much once again. We want to thank our guest. He's been awesome. We'll put the information in the description on tomorrow so that you guys can catch up with him. He's over on IG, and he does have a channel here. We put that in the link, and you guys can find him and follow him and subscribe to his channel. Once again, we want to thank you. If you haven't already liked the video, like the video, right? Yeah. Like the video. Yeah. It's so important. It really keeps us going here. And LMV says never bet against Blake. And we want to thank you tonight. We're on our way out. Anything else you want to say, Alex?
No, I just want to say I appreciate everybody. Get some rest, Aubrey, because I'm sure get some.
Yeah, it's been a long day. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you, my friend.
All right, you too. You take care now.
All right, guys, we'll see you. We're on out of here. Bye now.